The hidden dangers of DIY business automation. You know what's fascinating? We're living through this massive shift in how businesses automate their operations. And honestly, most business owners have no idea what's actually happening under their own roofs. So picture this. I was reviewing a mid-sized company's operations last quarter, about 120 employees, and I asked them how many automation tools they were using. The IT director confidently told me maybe 15, 20 tops. They then did an audit. Want to guess how many they found? 63. 63 separate automation tools that nobody in leadership even knew existed. And here's the thing, this isn't some horror story about a poorly run company. This is becoming the norm because automation has been democratized. Anyone can build a workflow now. Your marketing coordinator can connect HubSpot to Slack to Google Sheets without writing a single line of code. Your operations manager can automate invoice processing over a weekend using Zapier. It's incredible, right? Until it's not. Let me explain what's really going on here. The promise that's actually being delivered. About 75% of businesses, and this is from recent industry research, say they're seeing genuine competitive advantage from automation. That's not hype. That's real. Companies are moving faster, reducing errors, freeing up their people to do actual valuable work instead of copying and pasting data between systems. There is a small accounting firm, maybe 8 people, that automated their entire client onboarding process. What used to take 3 days of back and forth emails now happens in about 40 minutes. The client fills out a form, it triggers a sequence that creates their folder structure, sends them the right documents, schedules their kickoff call, and adds them to all the relevant systems. One person built this. No developers involved. And hey, if you're finding this useful so far, do me a favor and hit that like button. And subscribe to Small Business Risk if you haven't already. We dig into these kinds of operational landmines every week, because I guarantee some of what I'm about to tell you is happening in your business right now, whether you know it or not. The problem nobody wants to talk about. Here's where it gets interesting, and by interesting, I mean potentially catastrophic. These citizen developers, that's the industry term for non-IT people building automation, they're solving real problems. But they're also creating something I call shadow infrastructure. It's like shadow IT, but worse, because at least with shadow IT, you've got a piece of software that has a vendor, documentation, support. With these DIY automations, often the only person who knows how they work is the person who built them, and that person might leave, or get promoted, or just forget what they built 6 months ago. Let me give you an example. Use case. Small e-commerce company, about 50 employees. Their customer service manager, brilliant person, very technically inclined, built this elaborate automation that pulled customer complaint data from their help desk, analyzed it, categorized it, and automatically escalated certain types of issues to the right department heads. Worked beautifully until he left the company. Nobody else knew the automation existed. It kept running for 3 months after he left. Then one day, it broke. A vendor changed their API, and suddenly, high-priority customer complaints were just disappearing into the void. Nobody noticed for 2 weeks. By the time they figured it out, they'd lost 2 major accounts and had a PR nightmare on social media. The automation itself wasn't the problem. The lack of documentation, governance, ownership, that was the problem. The security nightmare. And we haven't even touched on security yet, because here's what happens in the real world. Someone needs to automate a process. They find a tool that works, they connect it to your systems, and in doing that, they grant that tool access to your data. I've seen automations that had access to entire customer databases when they only needed to read email addresses. I've seen workflows that stored sensitive financial data in personal Dropbox accounts because that's where the automation needed a temporary place to hold files. Temporary became permanent, and now you've got confidential business data sitting outside your security perimeter. One use case really drives this home. A sales team at a SaaS company built an automation to speed up their quote generation process. Made perfect sense. Pull data from the CRM, populate a template, send it to the prospect. Saved hours every week. What they didn't realize was that the no-code tool they chose was storing every quote, complete with pricing strategies, margin calculations, and customer information, on servers in a jurisdiction with very different data protection laws than where the company operated. When their compliance officer finally discovered it during an audit for a potential acquisition, they had to immediately shut down the automation, manually review thousands of quotes, and notify customers. Almost killed the deal. Nobody was trying to do anything wrong. They were trying to work more efficiently, but without proper security review, without understanding data governance, they created a massive liability. The governance black hole. You know what's wild? Most companies have approval processes for software purchases. You want to buy a new CRM? That's going through procurement, IT review, security assessment, the whole 9 yards. But these no-code automation tools, many of them have free tiers or cost less than $100 a month. So they're purchased on personal credit cards or buried in departmental expense accounts. Nobody's reviewing them. Nobody's assessing risk. Nobody's ensuring they comply with your security policies or regulatory requirements. And it creates this governance black hole. It doesn't know about them, security doesn't know about them, compliance doesn't know about them until something breaks or there's an audit or, worst case, there's a breach. There was a healthcare adjacent company, and during a compliance review, it was discovered they had patient-related data flowing through 7 different automation tools that had never been evaluated for regulatory compliance. Not even close. The potential fines if they'd been audited by the regulators could have put them out of business. The person who built these automations, they had no idea regulatory was even relevant. They weren't being negligent. They just didn't know what they didn't know. Process documentation, the unsexy solution. So here's the part where I'm supposed to tell you to shut down all citizen development and make everything go through IT, right? Lock it all down? No, that's not the answer, because then you lose all the benefits, the speed, the innovation, the empowerment of your people to solve their own problems. The answer is process documentation and discipline. And I know, documentation is boring. Nobody wants to do it. It's like flossing. Everyone knows they should do it, but here's the thing. In this context, documentation isn't about creating some massive manual that nobody reads. It's about creating visibility and transferability. Every automation should have, at minimum, 3 things documented. 1, what it does. Not the technical details, just the business function. This automation pulls daily sales data and sends a summary to the leadership team. 2, what it touches. What systems does it connect to? What data does it access? Where does information go? 3, who owns it? Not who built it. Who's responsible if it breaks? Because the person who built it might not be around forever. That's it. That's the foundation. You can build on it from there, but start with that. Building a real framework. Now, if you want to do this right, and if you're running a business of any real size, you should. You need a lightweight framework, not some massive governance bureaucracy that slows everything down, but a framework nonetheless. Here's what actually works in practice. First, registry. Just a simple spreadsheet. Every automation gets logged. Who built it, what it does, what systems it connects to, when it was created. Takes 5 minutes per automation. I've seen companies discover they had 3 different people who'd automated the same process 3 different ways just by creating this registry. Second, risk assessment. Not for every automation, but based on what it touches. Does it handle customer data, financial data? Does it have write access to critical systems? If yes to any of those, it needs a security review. Doesn't have to be elaborate, just someone with security knowledge looking at it and asking the right questions. Third, approval process, but make it lightweight. If someone wants to build an automation, they submit a quick request. Describes what they want to do, what tools they're thinking of using. IT and security can review it in 10 minutes. They're not trying to block things. They're trying to identify risks and maybe suggest better approaches. And look, if this is resonating with you, if you're starting to see these patterns in your own organization, leave a comment below. Tell me what you're seeing. What automation challenges are you dealing with? Because honestly, every company is wrestling with this stuff right now, and we all learn from each other's experiences. And while you're at it, hit subscribe. We're building a community of people who actually care about getting this operational stuff right. The Change Management Challenge. Here's what nobody tells you about implementing governance around citizen development. The real challenge isn't technical, it's cultural. Because you're essentially telling people who've been empowered to solve their own problems that now they need to ask permission. And if you handle that wrong, one of two things will happen. Either they ignore your new process and keep building automations under the radar, or they get frustrated and stop innovating altogether. I've seen both. Neither is good. The way to thread this needle is to position governance as enablement, not restriction. You're not trying to slow people down. You're trying to protect their work. You're trying to make sure that when they build something valuable, it doesn't disappear when they move to a different role. You're trying to ensure their innovations don't accidentally create problems that could hurt the company. One company I worked for reframed their entire approach. Instead of calling it automation governance, they called it automation support. They assigned someone in IT to be the automation advocate. Their job was to help people build better automations, not block them. If someone wanted to automate a process, the automation advocate would meet with them, understand what they were trying to do, and help them think through the design. Adoption went through the roof because people didn't feel like they were being policed. They felt like they were being supported. The training gap. And speaking of support, we need to talk about training because most companies are approaching this backwards. They're excited about no-code tools. They buy subscriptions to Zapier or Make or Power Automate. They tell their teams, hey, you can automate stuff now. And then they're surprised when things go sideways. But think about it. You wouldn't give someone access to your company database without teaching them about data integrity, right? You wouldn't let someone handle customer communications without training them on your brand voice and compliance requirements. Same principle applies here. Just because the tools are easy to use doesn't mean people automatically understand the implications of what they're building. At minimum, your citizen developers need training on three things: data security and privacy. What constitutes sensitive data? Where can it be stored? How should it be protected? What are the regulatory requirements for your industry? System dependencies and failure modes. What happens if your automation breaks? How could it break? What's the impact? How do you monitor it? And documentation practices. How to document what they've built so someone else can understand and maintain it. This doesn't need to be some formal certification program. A half-day workshop covers most of it, but skip this step and you're basically hoping for the best. The vendor risk nobody thinks about. Let me throw one more thing at you that keeps me up at night: vendor stability. See, the no-code automation space is hot right now. Lots of startups, lots of venture capital flowing in. That's great for innovation. But here's the reality. Not all of these companies are going to make it. There have been companies that have built critical business processes on automation platforms that got acquired and shut down, or that pivoted their product strategy and deprecated the features the company was relying on, or that just went out of business. And when that happens, your automation stops working. And if you didn't document it properly, if you didn't think about the dependency, you're scrambling to rebuild something critical while your business operations are disrupted. A retail company built their entire inventory management workflow on a promising automation platform. It worked great for 2 years. Then the platform got acquired by a larger company that wanted the technology but not the product. 6 months notice, then shut down. Fortunately, they had documented their automations well. They knew what needed to be rebuilt. It was still a scramble, still disruptive, but it wasn't catastrophic. The lesson? For critical processes, you need to understand your vendor dependencies, and you need a plan, even if it's just a rough sketch, for what you'd do if that vendor disappeared. What good looks like. So what does this actually look like when it's done right? I worked with a financial institution that nailed this, about 200 employees. They embraced citizen development and data analytics fully, but with structure. They created an automation center of excellence. Fancy name for a small team that supported automation initiatives, not gatekeepers, enablers. They had a simple approval process. Want to build an automation? Fill out a one-page form describing what you want to do. IT and security review it within 2 business days. Most things get approved immediately. Some get approved with modifications. Maybe use this tool instead of that one because it integrates better with our existing systems. Very few get rejected outright. Every automation goes in the registry. Every quarter, they review the registry and check if automations are still being used, still providing value, still maintained. They run quarterly training sessions on automation best practices. Optional, but well attended because they make them practical and relevant. And here's the key. They celebrate automation success stories. When someone builds something that creates real value, they showcase it. They recognize it. They create a culture where automating thoughtfully is valued. Result? They've got hundreds of automations running. They're more efficient than their competitors. They've had zero security incidents related to automation. And when people leave, their automations don't die with them because there's proper documentation and ownership. That's what good looks like. The path forward. Look, we're not going back. The democratization of automation is here to stay, and that's genuinely good. It should be easier for people to automate repetitive work. It should be easier to connect systems and move data around. The promise is real. But we can't pretend the risks aren't real too. Security breaches, compliance violations, operational disruptions, these are all happening right now at companies that thought they had automation under control. The answer isn't to shut everything down. It's to bring discipline and structure to the chaos. It's to create visibility into what's being built. It's to assess and manage risk without killing innovation. Start simple. Create that registry. Implement a lightweight approval process. Train your people on the basics of security and documentation. Build from there. Because the companies that figure this out, the ones that can move fast and maintain control, they're going to have a massive advantage. They'll get all the benefits of citizen development without the nightmare scenarios. The companies that don't, they're playing Russian roulette with their operations and their data, and eventually their luck runs out. Call to action. So here's what I want you to do. If you're running a business, or you're responsible for operations, or IT, or security, take an hour this week and do an informal audit. Ask around. What automations exist that you don't know about? Talk to your teams. You'll be surprised what you find. And once you know what's out there, start building that registry. Start creating visibility. Because you can't manage what you don't know exists. If you found this valuable, I would really appreciate it if you'd share it with other business owners or operators who might benefit. This stuff matters. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but it's the difference between automation that drives your business forward and automation that blows up in your face. Please, keep following Small Business Risk. We're going deep on operational challenges that real businesses face every day. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and join the conversation in the comments. Until next time, automate thoughtfully, document thoroughly, and don't let the chaos win.